Hello, my name's Sarita and I'm speaking to you today from Solhenge, and I'm here to help you understand the truth about who you are. Now, what I wanted to share with you today was my thoughts on the subject of consent, specifically consent in terms of our relationship with Mother Earth, with Gaia that we live upon. And this is a subject that really came up for me really strongly last week because I was at a festival in England called Woman Fest. And if you are in UK in August next year, I strongly recommend that you go to this festival. It was really enlightening. And something happened there that really got me thinking. And what happened was that there were basically 400 women staying over a period of 4 days on a piece of land opposite the Tor in Glastonbury. And it was very beautiful piece of land that really hadn't been used for much before. It was, kind of an empty piece of land. And on that land, there is a spring, which the farmers have had a tiny little pump in for years and years and years, and they get this beautiful spring water out of the ground. And what happened was 400 women arrived, and that spring was basically servicing us. It was giving us, obviously, our drinking water, all the water we use for cooking, and all the water that we were using for our washing over the 4 days. And what happened on the second day was the spring dried up. And the organisers of this festival, using their analytical minds, rushed off and got an enormous pump and placed it into the spring to bring more water up. And it wouldn't work. It just broke, basically. And then they called in engineers and they tried to get the pump to work and bring the spring water back, because obviously we were all stuck. We had nothing to drink or cook with or clean ourselves with. And nothing would work and this pump wouldn't work. And what happened was, at this festival, there were a number of elders and shamans at the festival. And what they did was they decided to go and have a conversation with the land, and more specifically with the consciousness of the spring water. So they decided to go and speak to the spring water itself. And what they found out was that the spring water had been under the ground for 100 years, and it would trickle and bubble up, and that was absolutely fine. But when 400 women arrived on the land and demanded to be watered, the spring got incredibly stressed. And then what we did was we placed a large mechanical object inside her without her permission. And she just couldn't cope. The spring just couldn't cope. And this was a really interesting event, and the way that the elder shaman who recounted the story explained it was that we had basically placed this object inside a pure and flowing stream without asking for consent. And as she was telling us this story, because she happened to be telling us during the last ceremony, everybody who was there listening to this story was crying, and as was she, because we really understood what we had done to this beautiful spring water because we hadn't asked for consent. We had just assumed that it was there and ours for the taking. And I'm talking about 400 pretty conscientious people. And anyway, the short story is that the elders decided to sing to the spring to heal her and ask for her consent. And as they were singing, the spring began to bubble up and overflow, and we were granted the water for the whole rest of the festival. And wow, what an interesting story, and so interesting on so many layers, specifically in terms of consent. And the first layer that we really need to grasp in relationship to this story is that everything has consciousness, and all of our consciousnesses, in terms of us as a species, is in communion always with the consciousness of Gaia, of that which we live upon. And even inanimate objects have consciousness. It was the consciousness, the stressed state of the spring, which caused the pump to stop working. Because if you consider that everything in your reality is a reflection of what you think and feel, everything is a reflection of your consciousness, of what you're thinking and feeling. And so everything in our world has a consciousness. And so that's the first layer that really needs to be understood. And I think what humans have been doing is we've been sort of running around on this earth without any kind of awareness that any of the things in our reality, particularly nature and Mother Earth itself, has a consciousness. And so what we've been doing is we've been raping and pillaging the earth without asking for permission. And truly, this has got to be affecting not just the earth, but also the state of humanity. And as I've been thinking about consent and what happened at this festival, I'm really coming into an understanding that what we're seeing on the earth in terms of climate change and everything that's going on is in direct relation to the fact that we are not honoring or working with or asking for consent in any way as we go about our business upon the earth. We are taking from her, and obviously that's affecting Gaia herself. But what it's also doing is it's affecting us as a species, because if you think about it, 97% of our thoughts are unconscious. And if we are raping anything, and I really not judging any one of you or myself or having a go at anyone, but think about it. If we're raping Mother Earth, if we take something from the earth, even if it's tap water, okay, without asking consent, basically we're taking something, we're raping without conscious awareness, and that has got to be affecting our unconscious programs. It's got to be affecting how we think and feel about ourselves, even if it's unconsciously. And if you look at the state of humans in the world at the moment, we are all living in a massive state of stress. There's so much depression, there's so much anxiety, there's so much anger, there's so much cancer, illnesses, mental health issues. You know, we're really at a point where we're not in alignment with ourselves, with the truth of who we are. And the truth of who we are is that we are a collective consciousness, so we're interconnected with all of each other, but with Gaia. We are part and parcel of this planet. And this is just so, so important. And it's really coming home to me. You know, I'm someone who's always been very mindful of trying to heal humans. That's my road. I really care about humanity. I want to help humanity as much as I can. And I've always had this sort of idea that Gaia could kind of look after herself, and she'd probably just kick us off eventually because we weren't being conscious of her. But what I'm really understanding now is that all of our unconscious acts in relation to Gaia, so in other words, in relation to ourselves, are affecting us unconsciously. And then what we're doing is we're acting this out with our dis-ease, whether that disease is mental, emotional, physical, or spiritual. And so we've really got to come into this understanding that we are in communion with the consciousness of Gaia herself. And in saying this, I really believe that there is no such thing as right and wrong. I don't believe that us wanting to consume things is a bad thing. I don't believe that us using the resources that Mother Earth gives us so freely is a bad thing. So, for example, I really think that taking oil is a bad thing. I think Gaia freely gives us, as our divine first mother, whatever we want. But what we're doing is we're taking and we're not asking. And that's making all of the difference in the limitations that we are placing upon ourselves in terms of the natural resources and in terms of coming into our elevated awareness, in terms of elevating our consciousness. Because if we take something, we limit it immediately. We immediately set up a resistance. Whereas if we, for example, asked permission for oil, and I'm taking oil because it's a very controversial subject, it would be freely given, I feel. And also, if we were in alignment enough to honor the earth and ask her for something, what would happen would be that we would then take into consideration all aspects of what we were taking, because we would think about each step along the process of what we were pulling out of the earth. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're an oil company and you wanted to put an oil rig somewhere. And instead of just chuck it there and taking out as much as you could, which would be affecting you and the land and everybody that oil comes into connection with, because everything has a consciousness, even the oil itself. So if you consume the oil that was taken out of the land without permission by people who didn't care and just wanted control and power, then that's going to be affecting the whole. It's affecting the whole collective consciousness. But if the oil company did a ceremony and they asked for permission from the land, and the land gave permission, and they were in an honorable communion with that land, they would then begin to think, okay, how could I take it honorably? Would it be good to pause at some points? Then they start to think about how they're dealing with other aspects of how are they transporting the oil. Would they ask for permission about how they're transporting it? What's the most honorable way to transport it? What about their workers? Are they treating them in an honorable way? And what happens is when you begin to ask for consent, it's a snowballing effect where you begin to look at consent on every single level and how it's affecting every single thing. And I really do believe in this abundance, this infinite abundance and resource that the earth has, if we were to work with her, not take from her. And so I think for the health of humanity and health, what I mean is alignment, we've really got to begin to consider honoring how we deal with Mother Earth. So what I've been doing this week is I've been taking these ideas that I'm thinking about. And as I've been feeding people on retreat this week, and there've been a lot of people here, not a lot, but there's been 18. So I'm feeding 18 people. And a lot of that food is coming from my land. A lot of it's coming out of the vegetable patch or from fruit trees or from herb bushes or whatever. What I've been doing is I've been practicing, because this is another practice, asking the fruit trees or the bushes if they mind if I take their leaves or their produce to feed myself and other people. And this has been a really interesting process for me. I'm quite used to thanking bushes and trees when I take things, but I've never thought to ask permission before. And what's happened is, as I'm asking permission, I'm feeling more and more in alignment with myself. So I'm personally feeling better. I'm quite sure the consciousness of the tree or the bush or the fruit that I'm asking permission from is feeling more aligned as well. Therefore, there's a snowball effect that the earth is feeling more aligned on my beautiful plot that I live on, and the people who are consuming the produce are consuming a produce which is in a vibrational resonance with being in alignment. So there's this just kind of knock-on effect that I had never considered in terms of asking for consent. So what I'm suggesting to you is to try this for yourself. Try asking for consent from everything that you want to consume for 1 week. Just try it and see what happens. Even if you want to buy a t-shirt, does that t-shirt want to be bought? Does it want to be used? Does it want to be worn? Every single thing has consciousness. You've got to understand this. Everything is a projection, a manifested projection of how you think and feel. And you're only 4% matter. So this 96% energy, this consciousness that envelops everything, that is the source field, that is all that is so important in order to come into alignment with. And I'm wondering if this is one of the most important sort of thoughts I've ever thought, actually, because if we want to elevate our awareness and move into the 5th dimension, so in other words, to elevate into higher dimensional living, the only way is to come into the understanding that we are not only a collective consciousness, but that we are the earth. We literally are the earth. If you look at us physically, we've got all the same nutrients and minerals and components as the earth herself, and even from the stars, we've got the same things inside our physical body. But energetically, in terms of consciousness, we are planet Earth. We are so connected. Every single thing that we have, every single thing that you can look at, that you can touch, that you can feel, that you consume, that you wear, that houses you, comes from the earth. It all comes from the earth, and it is so freely given to you with such love. And there's a real urgency now that we begin to understand that Mother Earth and us, humanity, as interconnected with Mother Earth, is in a really great stress at the moment. We're really stressed, and we're really out of alignment. And if we can, as individuals, begin to pull that alignment back to where it comes from, to really understand the truth of who we are, to understand that when you pick a leaf, you're picking yourself. If you take it, you're taking it from yourself. You're raping yourself if you don't ask consent. And also, as you begin to ask consent, what's going to happen is you're going to align yourself with your own internal conscious mechanisms, and you're going to go, do I really feel like eating this basil leaf? Do I really feel like buying this new dress? You're going to come more into alignment and more into an awareness about who you really are. And the only way that we can elevate our awareness, go into the fifth dimension and experience our ascension, is to take Earth and our physical bodies with us. We are taking our physicality with us. We chose to incarnate to have this physical experience with all its range of emotions. And so this is just another way to expand and elevate your awareness. And if you're watching this channel, I just know that you're already pretty conscious that Gaia has a consciousness and very invested in that and understanding of that. Or maybe you're watching this channel because you're coming into this new awareness. And as with everything, we're infinite beings, and we can deepen and deepen our awareness and deepen our understanding that we are all that is and connected to all that is. So I really think if we can, as individuals, begin to ask consent, to begin to merge with the consciousnesses that are around us, we are going to affect how others around us think and feel, because we are all interconnected. And so as a last note, I wanted to just share with you a brief method that I use to connect with the plants. I used to use this method to say thank you to the plant, but now I'm using it for consent. And so I'm going to share this with you. So basically what I would do is, if possible, I would be in proximity with the plant. I would drop my awareness from my egoic head brain down my body and into my heart center, or I would just feel myself as an energetic being. And then what I would do when I was in that state is I would try to connect and feel the plant, either their heart center or themselves, as an energetic being. So you begin to feel the energy, which is obviously touching and interconnected. And then literally I just ask that energy, that consciousness, that essence, is it okay if I pick and consume you? And then you wait for your answer. And actually all week, all I've got is yeses, because obviously the earth loves to share. And, vegetables, their highest expression is to be shared and consumed and be in communion with us. Or this is what I feel anyway. And so this is another practice. And it sounds like it would take a while. It does take a few moments to connect and have a conversation, but you would take a few moments to connect and have a conversation with a human. So why not a plant? And I promise you, if you do this for a week, I've only been doing it for a week, it feels better. It feels cleaner. It feels more alive, to be alive and to be in communion with everything that is around me. And you're going to feel this too. And I think the more we do this, the more into alignment we're going to come, and the higher and more heightened our awareness is going to become as well. So that was my consent rant. I hope it was interesting for you, and there's just so many layers to it that, yeah, I'll probably have another rant about it in another few weeks. But thank you very much for listening, and if you do ask for consent all week, I hope you enjoy your process. Many blessings to you.